This is what I spent all my time studying, working on, speaking on. And understand too that I was the hostage for many years. I would show up to these things and sit in the back of the room and talk or whatever too. I wasn't that motivated, to learn a lot. In fact, I hated to read. Couldn't wait to get out of school so I wouldn't have to read anymore. And I thought, once I'm done with school, I am done reading forever. I'll never have to do that again. Right? And then, so when I finished my undergrad, I thought, finally I'm done reading. Then I decided to go back and get my master's. And it occurred to me that, I have a pretty good memory. And if a professor's going to test me on something, they're probably going to tell me about it first. So I came up with this great plan, and it worked. Go to class and pay attention. I won't have to read. I managed to ace my master's program without ever even buying a textbook. It was easy. Pay attention, take the tests. They're not going to trick me. I'm never going to read again. Are you kidding me? By the way, anytime you say you're never going to do something, it's a guarantee you're going to do a lot of it. So now I read because I want to get better at what I do. And I went from being that person that refused to read to becoming a best-selling author. Right? I've now written 3 books. Back then, I had not read 3 books. Right? So experiences in my own life caused me to sit down and start looking at these things, reflecting on it, and then writing about it. And the concept of motivation and morale kept coming up because I really started studying what makes people happy, what makes people do what they do. What I learned is that every single problem in the world comes down to just one thing. Every problem is the result of an unmet expectation somewhere. We expect things to be a certain way, and when they are not, it creates this gap. And then we instantly fill that gap with a negative emotion. The longer we sit in that negative emotion, the more it begins to affect us. Right? So you don't want to sit in that negativity for too long. What I've done is I've gone and broken this down into 5 areas that we have expectations in. And then I've identified some main things in those 5 areas that will cause our employees to get demotivated. First area is people. We all have expectations about the relationships that we have at work. Some people show up to work wanting to be best friends with everybody there. Other people just want to be able to be left alone and do their job, but they want to get along. Nobody expects to hate the people they work with. A couple things that damage the people category. One is what I call task-first communication. Did you get that report done? Where's that file? We approach people about the work and we don't acknowledge the person. If you don't change anything else, change that first. Did you get that report done? Good morning, Wayne. You have that report ready? Huge difference. Acknowledge the person first. Why do you think people don't do that? They're in a hurry. Yeah, we talked about the Andrew Carnegie thing before, getting to know something about all those people and how drastically that improved productivity. That was one of the best management studies of all time, one of the least utilized today. And today we see task-first communication all the time, and it usually happens for one of 2 reasons. Either it rolls downhill, which means somebody just got them barking at them, so they're going to come bark at you, or they're feeling like they just don't have enough time. They're pressured to get things done. I did a small group study with this recently, and I had somebody tell me flat. She goes, I don't do this. I just walk in and say, do you have these files? Do you have these folders? She goes, I don't have time to stop and chit-chat with everybody. Okay. I'm like, well, why is that? She thought about it. She's like, honestly, because I'm usually about 15 minutes late to work. Okay, because you can't get to work on time, you get to be a jerk to everyone else? Is that how this works? So if you don't fix anything else, fix that. She did it for a week. She told me at the end of that week she had the best week of work she'd ever had. She even said one of the women baked her cookies at the end of the week. It was like, oh, you're different. Right? Drastically changed the relationships at work just by saying the person's name before you deal with them. Sometimes it's just eye contact. At least make eye contact with somebody before you talk to them. I had a job for 9 years where my number one goal was to make sure the boss didn't know where my office was. Because if they came to talk to me, it was always about the work and it was always negative. It was always what you did wrong. If you were doing a good job, you never saw them. Right? We don't want to be those kinds of leaders. We want to be the kind of leader that people can come to and talk to and not be afraid of. Second thing that will damage the area of people is feeling like they are cliques and groups forming and they're feeling left out. So be careful of those kinds of things that are going on. If you have friendships that are taking place outside of work, don't talk about them in work because it alienates other people. That's all. Second category is what I call responsibilities. To me, this is your sense of purpose. We all want to feel like what we do, what we're responsible for, is important and makes a difference. We all want to believe that our work matters, right? What I found with the area of responsibilities is there's usually two problems. One is people feel overworked and underappreciated. Two is they do not feel like they're being utilized properly. Not working in their area of giftedness, if you will. Which actually makes sense. Why would you ever post a job to hire somebody? What? We need help. We have work that needs done. Why would someone take a job? They need the money and they can do the work. Think about this. I have work that needs done. They need the money, they can do the work. This means we don't necessarily have to have eHarmony running our HR departments, does it? This is like a no-brainer. I have work, you need work. When I've done consulting work, about half the time I've gone into companies and I could pick literally almost half of their employees are actually better suited for another job in that company. But that's not the one you were hiring for when they needed the money. And how often do you look at moving people around to get them in the right place?
I have a perfect example of that. We had hired several years ago a young man into an inside sales position. He struggled, he messed up, he couldn't seem to get it. And we realized it was not his forte, and a position came open into our installation team. He's now a supervisor there because we were able to find his niche.
Right. And here's what will happen. When you first hire them, they're doing really good. Because now they have a job and they have money, so they're grateful and everything's cool. But over time, if they're not being utilized properly, that motivation will just decline. And it's not, I'll give you an example. I had a guy years ago, I was managing this place. We had a warehouse. And then we also, every once in a while, would outsource some graphic design work for flyers, things like that. Well, we had a guy working in the warehouse. The best way to describe him is he's kind of grumpy. Kept to himself, didn't bother, didn't engage much. Well, one day I walked back to the warehouse and people were on a coffee break. He was there with a couple other people. And this was back in the day when not everybody could turn on a computer and design stuff, basically. So he's telling a story about helping his daughter with a school project. And it sounded a lot like he was designing the flyer things that we used. So a couple weeks later, we had a need to design a sales flyer. And we were going to pay a company to do it. And I thought, you know what, let me try this. So I went back to the warehouse, talked to him, see if he could design this flyer for us, and he did. And what do you think happened after that? No, we did not open a graphics department just for him. In fact, we never asked him to do another graphic design piece again. But he became a much better warehouse worker. See, his job in the warehouse, he looked at that job as just a job. Anyone can do this. and he was distant and removed. But when we took something that really only he could do at the time and used that to help further the company, now we saw value in him. He felt more important. He became more team-oriented. He became a lot easier to deal with. Exactly. He had purpose there. Now, the warehouse job has purpose too, but in his mind, it wasn't a good use of his gifts and talents, so he didn't feel that purpose. Right? I meet with people early on, figure out what their interests are, what their hobbies are, what their goals are, and I look at, what's the best fit for that person? And can I start to move them there? Or when it opens up, can I look at making that move? Again, this is the difference between what comes first, the player or the position. Can we move people around and get them into the right place? Right? And then the piece of feeling overworked and underappreciated, what I see there a lot too is you get the people that complain quite often about the work. And our normal response would be, we have work to do, and you're like, oh no, she looks mean, can you do this? Like we steer away from the grumpy person, right? Because they complain too much about the work. I've done the opposite. You're complaining about the work. My solution is I'm going to give you more work to do. And the interesting thing is about 50% of the time, their attitude improves. They're complaining about the work. I give them more work to do, and their attitude gets better. That doesn't sound right, does it? What I'm hearing when they're complaining is that they are overworked. But to me, I know what they're really saying is they are underappreciated. So instead, I'm going to go to her and say, you know what? I know you're busy, but I have this report done, and I know that you're the right person to be able to get this done. Can I get your help with this? Even though it's more work, I've just sent her the message that, you know what? I do see you. I do value you. I respect your work, and it's important to our bottom line. I've given her purpose. Because of that, about 50% of the time, the attitude will improve. The other 50% of the time, it's probably something going on at home. There's nothing I can do about it. Okay. Next category, activities. This is that work as usual thing right here in their activities. Right? How many of you got up this morning and said, I really hope this seminar is boring? No? How many of you think that every day at work? I really hope my job is boring. Okay, maybe you hope it's not chaotic, but I'm sure you don't hope it's boring. But a lot of the jobs that we manage are boring, monotonous jobs. Anyone here work in a call center? Okay. You guys do? Is it a fun job? Okay.
The agents might say differently.
Okay, they would say differently?
Yeah.
I think, to me, that's one of those things, what motivates you, right? Or what
Right.
you enjoy, that it's all perspective, right?
Okay. Well, let me ask you this. When's the last time you asked a 5-year-old what they want to be when they grow up and they said, I want to work in a call center?
Yeah.
For a lot of people, it sounds like torture. It sounds like a boring, monotonous job, right?
Yeah.
I have a friend who works in a call center, and she is not a boring person at all, and she loves her job. A couple years ago for her birthday, the one thing that she wanted for her birthday was a new high-powered Nerf gun. Because every once in a while in the call center, they ring a bell to let everyone know, drop what you're doing, 10-minute Nerf gun fight. 10 minutes later, they ring another bell, back to work. In a boring, monotonous job like a call center, she wakes up every day going, I can't wait to see what's going to happen at work today. People want to enjoy their lives. They spend the good majority of that life at work. There are things we can do to make even the most boring jobs a little more fun for people. Look at places like Google. Google requires you to spend 20% of your day thinking of new ideas and not doing the work they're paying you to do. They have sleep pods so that you can take a nap because they want you to be at your best energy when it's time to do the work. And you can't be at your best energy if you are bored out of your skull. Right? So by taking a 10-minute Nerf gun break, when they get back to work, they do a better job, they're more efficient, more productive.
I think it's with the activities that you allow them to do as well. So I work from home, I have 2 kids, and I will work from home as needed. I allow my employees to do the same because it's only fair because I work from home. It's not a company policy, it's not anything that says we can, but I encourage them if they need to work from home to work from home. And so they appreciate that. That's an activity that they appreciate, that they look forward to. It's not even a scheduled thing, but they know that if something comes up and they have tile being installed and they need to be there, they can work from home instead of taking the day off.
Right?
And so it's just that, having the opportunity to do that, that motivates them.
And that fits in with that whole management style of not being the old school manager, but figuring out, and you're managing based on output rather than based on hours. So you have to get your work done. As long as you're getting your work done, I'm not going to micromanage you. Now back to the story of the 2 ladies behind you that were talking. If one of your people you can say work from home, and they're not getting their work done, pull them back in the office. Now you've got to sit here. You don't get that same privilege. But you're managing differently, that's all. But even on any job, we can take any job, we can do something to make it more interesting for people. And then another problem there when it comes to activities are people are just leaving work drained and are not doing anything when they get home to recharge. And sometimes it's because we're working them too long, too hard, too much overtime, or the work is just so boring and monotonous that when they get home, they just crash. So we want to get people into their best energy whenever possible. Next area is money. People will complain about money. And usually it's an idea of value. So there's 3 areas when it comes to money. There is need, there is comfort, and there is status. If it's an issue of need, that's a problem that's got to get fixed. If somebody doesn't have their basic needs met, if they're complaining about money, the only solution is more money. They have to have their basic needs met. If it's an issue of comfort, which really becomes an issue of value, that's the scenario we're going to talk about in a minute. And then there's status once you reach a certain level of money. But the big problem that we're going to deal with the second 2, we can't touch the needs one, but with the other ones, it's an idea of value. So I feel like I'm worth this much, but you're only paying me this much. There's a gap. What's going to happen over time? One of 2 things will happen. They will either start performing to the level that you pay them, which means they're slacking off, or they will self-compensate, which could mean they're stealing from you. Usually in today's world, what it means is they're spending a lot of time you're paying them for, and they're on Amazon and Facebook and doing anything other than what you're paying them for. And they don't feel bad because you owe them. Now, I have a couple solutions for that. And it is not pay them more. Because honestly, this is a question of value, not of money. If you pay them more in another month, they'll be broke anyway, and you'll have less money. I do believe in financial education. If you could put people through a course to teach them how to manage their money better, in the end, they'll have more. You get to keep some of yours. That's a good one. However, an even better solution, and it's a big problem when it comes to money. First problem is I don't feel like I'm getting what I'm worth. The second one is seeing an opportunity. Tell you who does an excellent job with this, and honestly they do a great job with all 5 of these categories, but specifically with money. The network marketing companies. Those MLMs, direct sales. Anyone ever been to one of their meetings? They get a big conference room, they get everybody packed in, and they put the company millionaire at the front of the room. And the newest millionaire stands up there and tells everybody else how easy it is to become a millionaire. All you got to do is you get 2 people, and then they get 2 people, and they get 2 people, and you'll have $1 million. And everyone in that audience is sitting there going, wow, that's amazing. Next year, I'm going to be up there. I'm going to be the next millionaire. No, you're not. You're the customer. You're spending more than you're making. But they're still motivated because the reason they're so motivated is I have shown you the steps you need to take to get there. And if I show you the steps to get there and you believe you can get there, you'll stay motivated. The last category is environment. No one is going to come to you and tell you that they are leaving your company because your bathrooms are dirty. But let me tell you, it makes a difference. I can tell within 2 minutes, when I go to do consulting work, I can tell within 2 minutes of walking into a company what the employees are going to tell me. If I walk in and it's well decorated, there's good lighting, somebody greets me, usually they'll offer me coffee or water, bathrooms are clean. When I sit down with the employees, every time it's the same thing. It's a pretty good company and they seem to care. When I walk in and it looks like a warehouse. Now I get it, you might work in a warehouse. But if you're receiving guests, they should not walk into what looks like the middle of your warehouse where they see all the work being done. But when I walk in and it looks like a warehouse and your bathrooms were clean in January, when I sit down with the employees, it's the same thing every time. This is a turn and burn operation. They don't care about us. All they care about is money. Your environment plays a much bigger role in productivity and satisfaction than we give it credit for. Here's the thing. When you see a morale shift, people start to lose their motivation. It's because something is off in one of these 5 areas. And if it's off for too long, it spreads. I have a coaching client, 2 weeks ago, she called me, first thing in the morning. She was like, I just wrote an email to my bosses, to the owners of the company, and I wanted to call you before I hit send. So a couple weeks before that, she opened up a medical clinic. They expanded, they opened up a clinic, she's in charge, they gave her 1 employee. They should have given her 3, they gave her 1. A couple weeks before that, she starts complaining to me that there's way too much work to be done. They should have given her 3 people and not 1. She's having a hard time getting that 1 person trained because there's just not enough time, too much to do. What kind of problem does she have? She has a responsibility problem. She's feeling overworked and underappreciated at this point. She's feeling like she's too overworked. The next time I talked to her, they had hired another person, so now she has 2 people she's trying to get trained, but she's the lion personality who's trying to do it all herself and doesn't have the time to stop and train the other people. So what does she start telling me? These people they gave me have no clue what they're doing. You know what? I don't know why they hired them. They're useless. Now what she got a problem in? People problem. She's complaining about the people. It wasn't the people's fault. She just didn't have the time to train them. They didn't know what to do. So she had a responsibility problem that became a people problem. And then she says to me, you know what? I haven't done yoga in 2 months. What problem's that? Activities. And she says, you know, if I knew it was going to be this much work, I would have demanded more money. Now she has a problem in value. She feels like she's worth more than what they're paying her. And she says to me, you know what? I walk in and they have my picture in there and it's like they promote me. She's like, it just makes me feel creepy when I walk in the building. What's her problem now? Environment. She had 1 problem. She was overworked. That problem persisted for so long it became 5 problems. It became a problem in every area because 1 problem wasn't dealt with. And it starts to spread. I am happy to report that last week she was on vacation. Because I pointed out to her, don't hit send, Let's talk this through. You have one problem. You feel overworked. Obviously, they appreciate you because your picture's on the building, right? They gave you 2 more employees, so they realize it. We have to figure out how you can get those people trained. You don't have 5 problems. You had 1 problem, and we're in the middle of finding the solution to that 1 problem. Rather than go in there raging, just tell them you need time off. You need a vacation. You need a break. Regroup and come back. Anyone ever pulled into work and looked at the building and said, I hate this place? What'd the building do to you?
I would get demoralized every time I saw it.
Yeah. Again, 9 years, I pulled in, looked at the building, man, I hate this place. It wasn't the building's fault. It was my boss, who every time you saw them, it was a negative conversation. It was some of the work that I felt like was probably below my skill set. I wasn't being utilized properly. I had a people problem. I had a responsibility problem. Those persisted for so long that every time I pulled into work, I looked at the building, I started getting anxiety about the other problems I was going to face, and now I had an environment problem too. And it didn't take long before I was complaining about the money and the activities as well. We can affect every one of these areas. We just have to be aware of it, make changes, make shifts. Is that helpful? Okay, anyone deal with drama? If you're not dealing with it, maybe you're creating it, I don't know. Right? There's drama everywhere, right? Would you like a strategy for dealing with drama? This is pretty cool. I was working on that last book, and I have a friend who, he's basically an emotional coach for actors. So like Will Smith had this guy on retainer. When Will Smith got a job, he would call him, and they would discuss the emotions of the character. So I called him. I'm like, I'm working on this. Do you have any input as far as like drama from Hollywood perspective? He told me, he's like, I know this other guy, though, that would be perfect. He's like, why don't you email this director? See what he says. So I sent an email to a Hollywood director, fully expecting the form letter back in 5 weeks, right? 5 minutes later, the director emails me back and says, this is great. Would you be willing to come to my house for a day? Okay. So I spent a day in Hollywood, in the home of a Hollywood director, talking about how they create drama in TV and movies. It was really neat because his job was to create drama. Mine was to control it. What he told me was awesome. What he said is that most directors will shoot a scene, and after the scene, they'll turn to an actor and say, you know what, I need more anger, I need more rage, I need more of whatever, certain emotion. He said they go back and reshoot the scene, and every time the actor will do the exact same thing they did before, just louder. Because what's more anger? What he does different, instead of talking to the actor, before they shoot the scene at all, he'll get inside the head of the character that the actor's playing, and he will exaggerate the expected outcome. When this happens, it's going to be amazing, or it's going to be horrible, whatever it is. Then they shoot the scene for the first time, and the actor gives them a real emotion. Said it sometimes is different than what they were expecting, but it always ends up better because it's real. So I thought about this for a minute. Every problem comes from an unmet expectation. So we create drama in our own lives by exaggerating the expectation. So when we exaggerate the expectation, it creates a bigger gap, which creates a deeper emotion. Now, because the emotion is so deep, we tell ourselves stories about why we didn't get what we wanted. Can't be my fault. Now, because we know their stories, we then have to go recruit other people to believe our story so we feel validated. Does that sound like drama? Exaggerate the expectations, you got deep emotions, you tell yourself stories, and you recruit other people. Here's why we're struggling to control drama in the workplace or at home. We are treating drama like all the other directors. We're trying to manage emotions. You can't manage people's emotions. If you don't believe me, I have an experiment for you. Go home tonight, look your significant other in the eye, and just say to them, just calm down. See what happens. Has anyone ever calmed down when someone told you to calm down? No, you get 3 times more emotional on the spot, don't you? Don't you dare tell me to calm down. Trying to manage emotions does not work. Instead, what will work is what this other director is doing. Manage the expectation that created the emotion to begin with. Right? David, I know that you really were looking forward to that promotion, and I could tell that you're frustrated. Now, here's how we handle this. First of all, I tell people all the time, understand this. Cognitive solutions don't fix emotional problems.